It's called The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. It's been stuck in my head basically since this time yesterday. You would have heard it. It's like really old. It's like, know when to fold 'em. You've definitely
Do you play
heard
it in the gym a lot? Is that why
I was
definitely
playing
heard
it
of
all morning. So this morning, I made a playlist called, I didn't really name it. It's like called My Playlist 107. That was the default name. And it's just all these really old songs that when cranked up really loud, are just all time. So there's that song, which I reckon if you heard, you'd be familiar with it.
Maybe.
Do you know the song Country Roads?
Yes, I do.
That, Great Balls of Fire.
No.
Have you seen, you might recognise it. Have you watched Top Gun 2?
Yes, I have.
You know when they're in the pub and he's playing on the
Yes,
piano?
yeah.
That song?
Oh, love
And
that
then just
scene.
think about, another 20 all-time hits.
That's
And
a
I was
vibe.
just
That's
banging
a
it all
vibe.
morning.
That's a
And
vibe.
some people didn't appreciate it. They didn't really think that it was training music.
Right.
But I think if you're bothered by the music, you're not really dialed in enough.
Yeah, fair enough. Was it a good training session this morning for everyone?
It was good for me. And if it's good for me, then it's good for everyone else.
Okay.
How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not much has happened for me. How about you?
Good. It's been muggy, that's for sure.
Yes.
Melbourne weather's
random weather.
turning it on. It was 20 degrees at 6 a.m. That's grim. I'm not
So
sure. For
weird.
reference, it's never 20 degrees at 6
So
a.m.
humid as well.
No.
Yeah.
But also pissing down all morning.
What's with let's start with some groove news.
Groove news.
Yeah.
Did you see my story last night? The graphic I started making?
PBs and pints?
Yeah, PBs
Yeah.
and pints.
That's so fun.
So firstly, there was a grammatical error there. Vinay let me know, so thanks for that.
What was it?
I put an apostrophe after PBs.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I was hard committing to lowercase, and as a real stylistic decision. But an apostrophe makes it possessive. But I was looking for the plural,
Yeah.
not the possessive.
Yeah.
So really, it's PBs with no apostrophe. But it just looked like PBS or what was it? Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme.
Oh, that's why.
So I'm like,
Okay.
oh, I can't be that. But I've altered it, and now it's going to be capitals PB,
Yeah.
lowercase s.
All right.
That makes
Tell
sense
us
to me.
about it.
PBs and pints. It's my two favorite things on a day. So this really long time ago, I was trying to figure out another name for a max out day. So we've all heard of max out days or lifting days or testing days. Yeah, boring. I didn't just want to rename the groove. Actually, I was thinking groove lifting day. That sort of rhymed.
Yeah.
But anyway, I landed on this. Went to ChatGPT. I was like, help me think of a name where people come and max out and we go to the pub after.
Nice.
And I think one of the options was came up with pint. I'm like, all right, go again, but put in the word pint and tell me what you got. And it's PBs and pints. I'm like, yes. Oh, actually, I think it said PRs and pints, but I made the executive decision to go PBs.
I like PBs better too.
Yeah, people do. I feel like PR is almost an American thing.
Yeah, no wonder. Yeah, I don't hear PR that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So PBs and pints,
Yeah. What's the date?
November the 9th.
Yeah. Is it
That's,
open for all people or just groovers?
Good question. I can now announce just the groovers. In my head, I call people the groovers too,
Oh, do
but I
you?
don't say
Okay.
it out loud because it sounds lame.
I like it.
The groovers. It is open to all. I got confirmation of this yesterday. So it's going to be a session open to the public. You can come visit. You don't need to pay a casual fee or anything. And the rough structure of it at the moment, I will confirm this. I'll put a post out. But at the moment, it's probably going to be lifting from 9 till 12. Obviously, there'll be a few people who have been working towards this and will max out their lifts, and might be all three, might be one. But even if that is not within your plans, come down, have a big training session. It's going to be almost like the weekend lifting session.
Yes.
And I think that'll help a lot more people come to it as well, which would be
Yeah.
cool.
Or the pints after.
Yeah. one or the other. And then we'll book some tables at the Prince Alfred Hotel in Port Melbourne afterwards and go and have some pints.
That's great.
Optional. Pints optional, not compulsory.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the idea. What do you
Fun.
think?
Love the idea. Yeah, I love max out days so much. I think they're so fun. There's no pressure. Everyone's there to max out. You get support from everyone. And yeah, it's still good vibes, honestly.
Yeah. Did you do a max out day? I know obviously you used to train at TSF, and I know they've definitely done a lot of max out days over the years. Would that have been the first thing you did before a comp, or did you get straight into like preparing for a comp?
I don't think I've ever participated in the max out day itself, but I've always been there, and it was probably my favorite event, second from my first comp. But it's always been so much fun because everyone gets around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good vibe. It's just like a big, wholesome training session.
Yeah.
And, like, I think everyone's just aware that, you know, some people are really trying to bring their best, and everyone's just by default a lot more supportive and up and about.
Yeah.
There's great energy.
Yeah.
I think,
It is a little bit chaotic as well, though.
Yeah, 100%. There's just stuff going on everywhere. People going mental. It's like a Tuesday. It's like last Tuesday night at the lifting session. I don't know what was in the water, but for whatever reason, like there were just PBs galore, or like, you know, top sets that were, you know, the best that ever performed. And it was just like, there was this 10-minute period where I just remember just rolling from one person to the next. And it was like just top set, last warm up, top set. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah. Imagine that tenfold.
Yeah, it was a lot more screaming and yelling.
You're going to actually feel so chaotic because
I can't wait for that first pint is all I'm saying. But yeah, no, I'll put more information out soon to the public. But hey, if you come down, you can see Lou participate in it.
Come support me.
Tell everyone like what's been happening in your training. Obviously, you've been preparing for this. How are you feeling about it coming up? What's training like at the moment? Do you have any goals?
Oh, okay. Lots of questions there. Yeah. So I'll start off with my goals. Last block I hit PBs. So I hit a 60 kilogram bench PB and then my 100 squat PB, which I failed about 5 or 6 times in the past. So that was massive for me. And I'm just hoping to keep that up for this block. So to hopefully get a couple more PBs. I reckon it will be, again, a squat PB and a bench PB. Well, actually, I'm kind of hoping for a deadlift one too, but you didn't write it in my estimation. So I don't know. We'll see. I've kind of like dialed back a little bit on deadlifts just because I want to get the form right first. But yeah, training's been really fun. It's nice to have that goal to look and drive towards. But I am just getting a little bit, it's getting quite fatiguing.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to after, and like I've loved my deload weeks because I don't have to like dial in so much. But yeah, overall it's been great. I think the groovers have honestly been keeping me afloat. Like I go to the gym because I know that there'll be community and people around and friends to train with. So yeah, that's my update.
Yeah, no, I think you are in a challenging position in a way because, you know, last block finished, you hit the big milestone numbers. Like you hit the 100, you hit the blue plate bench. I actually can understand how it might actually be hard to then, you know, push out another block and try and go beyond that because those things are really, really exciting. But there's not long to go. And what you're experiencing is so common.
It is so common, yeah.
People at the end of comp prep, they can't wait for that comp prep to finish. Like training does become a drag, and it's quite simply because, you know, you're putting your body under all this load because naturally, you know, come the end of a peak or like testing period, you are lifting the heaviest weights you've lifted in that sort of relative period of time. So it does come at a physical toll and a physical cost. But just hold in there and I'm sure you'll
be worth it.
Yeah.
That feeling, that like dopamine hit when you get the PB is like always worth it. But yeah, you did remind me of that because I think I totally forgot how much it actually puts kind of a strain on your body when you're just training so hard. Yeah,
and just so consistently over time too. The squat, bench and dead, you know, to get better at them all, you just have to keep on doing them and it becomes quite monotonous and, you know, the same joints and muscle groups have just been fatigued pretty hard over time, and it can suck a bit. But no, I think it'll all be worth it for you.
How's your training been, Dali?
I'm back.
How long were you out for?
Nah, to be fair, I wasn't really out. I've actually been training pretty consistently for a while. People just don't see it because I tend to train sort of late morning at the end of coaching. And before nighttime. So I've been training pretty consistently, but more recently I've devised a plan to focus again on the squat, bench and deadlift and sort of look forward to next year and competitions I might do. So in the short term though, I'm doing I guess you'd call it a 9-week prep to I guess my own max out day or max out week, the week before Christmas. So I know training will probably for me be a bit absent for those 2 weeks over Christmas. I might only be able to get 1 or 2 sessions in. So I'm like, all right, let's just train really consistently, tick a lot of boxes, and then just see what point I'm up to come then. And then, not to feel too bad about the couple of weeks of a bit more chilled out training.
Is this an official day, or is this a competition?
No competition.
Okay.
When should I do it? I haven't decided whether or not I'll max out those singles in like the normal training week, or maybe I'll treat it like a comp and do it like a max out day on a Saturday or something.
But it's your solo max out day.
My solo, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't do it when everyone else is doing it because, I'm better off,
Okay. I assume it will be on a Tuesday night then.
You reckon I should?
Yeah, you have to.
Should I do it on the last lifting session of the year on a Tuesday night?
Yes.
All right.
Book it in.
All right, maybe I'll do that.
That's the next event.
Yeah. Everyone come watch me. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm very excited.
So good.
Yep.
Any other news?
Any other news? Not really. I don't think so. Going to all you can eat noodles tomorrow night.
Nice.
I'm excited for that. No yoga this past week.
You've only done it once. Don't act like you're going to be going
went
again.
Thursday night. But no other news.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Nah. Let's start off with some hot takes then.
Cool. Who wants to go first?
You can go.
Okay. I've referenced this before to you, so I think you sort of get it. But I've really, I think, clarified my thoughts here. My hot take. It's a hot take / gripe, to be fair. My hot take is that crap information online to do with training comes from coaches who talk about things that aren't based on their own experiences.
Okay. Can you clarify what that looks like online?
Okay. So there are a lot of people who will do quite similar, a lot of like fitness coaches or strength coaches or whatever online that, as you probably know, if you're listening to this, people in this industry do make content, informative content, and that's essentially just to help business, to build a profile and to build, I guess, trust for themselves. So it's really common for a coach to put out practical information. Now, because of that and because of this, I guess, demand to always put out some content, people tend to, I think, regurgitate a lot of information they hear or see to their own crowds. And hey, like, there's nothing wrong with regurgitating information, especially if it's good. But what I think happens is that people regurgitate stuff they just assume would be good and correct, but is not necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So you can tell whether something's recycled and reused if you're reading something online and you know that it's misinformation. Is that correct?
I can tell, yeah.
You can tell. Right, yeah.
Well, I just know when someone talks about X, I just think, and one reason, I don't mean to make this about me, but one thing I love about all the topics we talk about each week is I can talk about them, and I'm more than happy to talk about them because I've seen all these things happen with my own clients over the last 5 years. Like, I know if things work or don't. I'm never going to talk here about something theoretical and be like, oh, you should try this, when I've never actually seen my own client do it before.
From the start, you did say that I don't want to talk about anything that I need to religiously like look up and research.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, and that is the equivalent of what I'm describing,
Got
I
it.
guess.
Yeah,
Like if you're putting out stuff, it shouldn't be, you look up an article, read the article, summarize the article and put it out. Like, what the hell? That's, Anyway, but those sorts of things are really easy to regurgitate. And if they're easy to regurgitate, they tend to build traction and it becomes more and more popular.
Yeah.
So my hot take, that is the source of a lot of misinformation or bad information online.
Okay. I like it.
Quite simply, people not speaking from their own experience, which is very prevalent.
Yeah. Got it.
I thought I was actually really appropriate in my explanation then.
I really liked that one. Yeah, it was good.
It was calmer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, our hot takes have been a little bit forward, huh?
What have you brought for your hot take today?
My one is taking a seasonal break from gym is the answer to your burnout and the key to long-term gains.
All right, you're going to put me out of business. Tell me more about this.
So when I say a seasonal break, I'm thinking it's a planned pause in your training, or, if you're going on holiday, you're going on holiday. So you're not scheduling in your training and then planning your holiday. Or I think the other thing that I thought of was if you're training up your training style, so you're kind of taking a break from what you regularly do. And I just think that it prevents burnout, and over time you just find that enjoyment for training again, because if you're just constantly doing the same thing over and over, you get bored. Like, I know I get bored a bit more easily, but I think it can go for a lot of people as well. And sometimes I feel like when it comes up for people, especially if I guess it's harder if you have this big goal that you want to achieve, because you do have to be a bit more repetitive with your training. But I do find that even just taking a little break or like a little bit of a longer deload can help you feel a bit more refreshed and ready to train again when you do come back. And so that's what I think. What do you think?
No, I agree. I honestly think you've perfectly described my year of training. So my year of training, you probably don't know, but looks sort of like this. I did a couple comps in the back end of last year, then into team champs this year, which was March. I tried to keep that ball rolling. Like I planned to do a comp maybe like 10 weeks after that or something like that. And then maybe one after that. But I was bloody struggling to train. And
full on.
That was like full on. I just could not train.
Yeah.
I'd like try, stop, restart probably over like a month. Maybe I don't know, restarted a couple of times. And like, oh, this is no good.
Right.
So then for a longer stretch of time, my training has been very much, I guess a bit more general. I've had different focuses for a month at a time, whether it's more arm training or just more bench training. I sort of cycle between those couple of things. And only now, which I described earlier, do I feel like ready to, undertake some bigger training goals and more strenuous training and have training be a higher priority within my life. And had I not, I guess, recognized that period of time, and look, it probably took, some shit training sessions and shit blocks to figure out that I need to pull back a bit. Had I not made that realization, I would have just probably been training half-assed for quite some time rather than adjusting training to meet what I'm able to do for, I guess, a few months. Which has kept the ball rolling, and, I've been able to make progress in different areas over that time versus no progress. And then I'm able to, start again and...
Yeah, it feels
so.
good,
What you're describing is like I don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like training styles can be a really good way to have that variety and have that like mental refresh as well. Train styles, I guess, like just describing
Running, maybe. Taking up running
No.
instead.
No. Don't be silly. Where was I going with that? But yeah, no, I think I love your point. I wonder if it is hard. I reckon a lot of intelligent people would agree with you.
Yeah. Maybe I don't. I feel like I just receive a lot of feedback from people that they just need to keep pushing through all the time. I don't really hear many people taking a step back.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just who I've talked to. So,
yeah. I think you're right. It is harder when there is this bigger picture goal.
Yeah, true.
But at the same time, you know, you never know, you know, if you have 1 month of easier training or 1 month of an easier training, whatever, that's mentally easier as well. You don't know like what positive effect that that then allows you to get to in, sorry, none of those words made sense. You don't realize how beneficial that period of time is until like 6 months later or something like that. Like had you never taken that easier period, maybe you wouldn't have been able to train for the next 6 months and make all that progress. Maybe instead, had you kept on pushing through, you would have trained for another couple of months and then completely gone off the rails.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to explain that sometimes these proactive periods of time can do so much more for you in the long run.
Yeah, unless you're at that peak burnout spot, right?
Yeah,
then you would understand, okay, I should probably take a step back. But people generally wait till they get there before they do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because it is so hard. And I think you only learn these things more and more with more training experience and going through that sort of cycle over and over again. But you're right, like it is hard to
you think it's a waste of
that.
time and
correct.
I just need to get strong or get big or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah.
And look, to some degree, you know, if the motivation's there to keep on pushing through, you may as well make the most of it if it is in fact there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it won't always be the case forever in your training career. I can tell you that. Cool.
So good. I think that was pretty calm as well.
They were both really like sensible, well articulated hot takes.
So good.
That was good.
What's our topic?
Topic of the day. What is it?
Momentum. Everything about momentum. Actually, you should probably describe it because I don't know too much.
Well, momentum, we were having a chat about this the other day. You know, we hear momentum in training. It's this real buzzword and I love it. But the funny thing is, I kept on asking a bunch of coaches over the last few days as well. It's like, how do you define momentum in training? No one can really give an answer.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to do is we'll go with a working definition for now. And we'll probably like tweak it as we speak. And there's probably a few asterisks to this, but I think it will encapsulate what we're trying to explain.
Great.
So we're going to describe momentum. I've written it down. We're going to be more specific here. We're going to call it the week-to-week progress in training, or just that forward movement in training. When I say progress, doesn't necessarily mean strength progress, but you know, training loads going up, just the general
trajectory.
the general trajectory of the way training's going and keeping it moving forward.
Okay, so it doesn't. Can I clarify? It doesn't mean that you're progressively just moving up in weight every week.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's like, what can you do to... it describes just... I'm trying not to say the forward motion because I feel like that's very much what momentum is. But yes, it's not reflected just by load.
Yeah, sure. And
I think mental things come into it too, like confidence as well. Like I think that's a big thing and I'm sure we'll touch on it at some point. But, you know, confidence is equally something that you can build momentum with. And that reflects into training and whatnot. It's this funny thing, momentum.
Yes. So why is momentum important for performance or training?
So we love momentum and controlling momentum because it allows us to, I guess, peak at a specific point in time. And when we have performance-based goals, we want to, I guess, be able to promote a specific time where we want to be at our best. I'm using a lot of, I guess, left of center words here. And that might mean, say, you know, training for your max out day,
Yeah.
right? And that might be training for, you know, a powerlifting competition. But we want, say you, for this max out day, to be at your best strength at a particular point in time. Or I guess in the context of that we're going to mainly talk about it, in a particular week.
Yeah.
And by controlling it, it allows us to be good at that specific time rather than a random time, you know, maybe 2 weeks into a training block or 3 weeks into a training block. Because if we really went by, you know, what we're capable of on any given day, it might not look anything like a typical training block where you're able to, in most weeks, add load every week.
Yeah.
So main reason we control it is to be able to peak at a specific time.
Great. How do you personally structure this? Like, what does it look like in your programming for clients?
So a few years ago now, I drew inspiration from, there's this coaching company in America called The Strength Guys. I think I would have found out about them because they coach, do you know who Taylor Atwood is?
No.
So he's like my goat of powerlifting, which sort of reflects when I got into powerlifting. He's this like 74 kilo lifter and he's won, I don't know, maybe like 3 world titles or something. And he was, up until recently, pound for pound, like best lifter ever. It's like best dots ever
So cool.
for a natural lifter. Anyway, that's a huge side tangent. He was coached by this coaching company called The Strength Guys. And in COVID, I downloaded one of their like home programs. And what I thought was so cool was they had different themes to each week of training. I don't remember the exact words they used. They may have had things like I remember one was like attack and one was like recover and whatnot. Anyway, long story short, I drew inspiration from that and made my own version of these themed weeks. But what I wanted to achieve by theming these weeks was to essentially control momentum. Beforehand, I always knew, you know, like you don't want to max out in week 1 or you don't want to leave like too little room in the first couple of weeks. You want to be able to draw it across the training block so you can work in this sort of ascending cycle in a typical sort of training block.
Yeah.
You know, up and down and up and down. And over time, you'll sort of see this wave, this progressive. Sorry, I'm going to have to describe it for people not watching the video. Imagine, you're going up 5 points and then down a couple points, then up another 5 points and down another couple points.
Yeah.
I don't know if that audibly described it well. But this sort of waving flow of training over time. So I'm like, all right, how can I use like some sort of like system or some sort of constraints to help shape that? So it's just not my intuition being like, I know you've probably only got this many kilos next week. Like, let's go for that. I found early on in coaching, I was too reliant on me just telling someone what like weight to do the next week.
Yeah.
So essentially came up with 3 different themes of weeks, and they sort of have constraints within them. So the first one up is an intro week, which is coloured.
Yeah, green.
Green, yes. So green to come across as like obviously like easy or easy, I guess, was what I wanted to, I guess, portray through that colour.
You kind of titled it as like intro or deload, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. It's funny. Quick side tangent then. I reckon, and it's funny, I was talking to someone about this recently, but with sort of how the trends of programming over the years, no longer would I prescribe a deload week.
Yeah.
I essentially just use the intro week to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably when I made that initially, it probably says intro/deload, but yeah, to be honest, I only use it as intro.
Yeah.
So in intro week is, I guess, like a chance to get used to the training program. It's quite easier in intensity relative to like where you should be able to get up to. Sometimes that might mean like slightly less volume or slightly less sets if we sort of need to go a bit more aggressive with a pullback to drop some fatigue from the previous block. But more often than not, I do like to keep that pretty constant and just change intensity or load. In this intro week, what I like to do is honestly not even give people a choice of loads. Like I'll look at where if they are following a similar block to what they were previously, which is quite common in like a powerlifting style training, I'll look at where they started the previous block. If they did make great progress, I might start relatively a bit higher than where they did in that last block. But long story short, the loads are pretty easy. You might not even be able to register them sometimes on like an RPE scale, but it's to almost set this base level of, accumulation of all this volume to start the block and then to build back up on, build a base of volume to build back up from again.
Yeah, got it.
Makes sense?
Yeah. So just
Cool.
the first week is intro.
Just the first week is intro.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, like sometimes, and it really is context dependent, if timelines are involved, a typical block I would love to write over 5 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks, depending on timelines. But I might have someone that might have to, peak over 8 weeks. And sometimes it might be more appropriate to have 2 intro weeks to start if they're really buggered from the last thing.
Yeah.
But in a typical program, probably 1 intro week. Do you know what's the next theme of week?
Next is momentum, and it's blue.
It's blue. I don't know. It's blue for no reason. It's blue because it's a nice color and it's not red, basically. So in the momentum weeks, actually one thing I'll go back to in the intro week, because I've actually got a guide, as I think you've seen in your own program. There's a guide to what we're trying to achieve in an intro week.
Yeah.
There's a guide to load selection. And as I said in that intro week, I really like to control it.
Yeah.
And just sort of take that decision making completely out. There's then almost, not almost. I've written almost a mental. I don't know why I said almost a mental approach for that theme of week, and this particularly relates to people who, bring a lot of focus and adrenaline or concentration, or just do something to bring their best out of a lift, especially when it gets really, really heavy. So what I try to do also is taper that and control that too. So in an intro week, I don't want someone sniffing ammonia, screaming before they lift, or getting as dialed in as they normally would, because that comes also at a huge fatigue cost and mental cost as well.
Yeah.
So in an intro week, none of that, nice and calm, come in, get it done. In the blue momentum weeks, I guess they're more so characterized by what they're not, which is they're not the latter weeks of the block where we are trying to really push things.
Yeah.
A momentum week, and to paint a picture in your head if you're listening, a typical block structure I really like would be 1 momentum week, 1 intro week, which is the green, 2 momentum weeks, which is the blue, and I'll explain it more in a second, but 2 push weeks, which would be weeks 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Now we'll go back to the momentum weeks. Essentially, I want the momentum weeks to be a bridge between the intro weeks and the push weeks. So I want loads to, keep on building, but the key, responsibility of the momentum weeks is to prevent people from overshooting and perhaps performing way too close to failure, which will then not allow them enough room to keep on adding load towards the end of the block.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah. Would you describe it? What's the aim of it if you weren't to describe it as what not to do?
Sure.
Yeah.
The aim of the momentum weeks would be to continue to build confidence with loads.
Yeah.
And almost like tick the boxes, because it's not the time to go all out.
Got it. Okay.
Mental approach in these weeks, a bit more than the intro week for sure, and a bit more focus and concentration, but not the all-out approach of ammonia, etc.
Okay.
And look, obviously not everyone's that external, and not everyone uses the ammonia and screams and whatnot, but it still does relate to people who are very internal, who might sit on their own for 5 minutes before they need to go and lift. Same sort of thing. Like, I don't want someone to completely empty all their resources and tools for performing like that in these weeks either.
Yeah.
Load selection in these weeks, I also do control to some degree, but there is a bit more flexibility. So in these weeks, I'd really love to give a load range That might be a 5 kilo or 7.5 kilo or a big range. A range that someone can select load from, which would be capped, along with an RPE to help make that decision.
Sure.
Again, how do I even select those loads? A lot of the time, I want to see how things are changing or trending compared to their previous training block. And look, that is more so related to exercises that they have had in the previous block, and you can look at data from and compare to the current block. But, if things are trending earlier in the block already better than the last block, you can sort of make the inference or make the estimation that, they're probably going to be, 2.5 or 5 kilos ahead of where they were last block. So I'm going to create those load ranges around that estimation to keep things going.
Sure. Got it.
Makes sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Mental approach, tick. Load selection, tick. Aim, tick.
Yeah.
Cool. Last piece of the puzzle are the push weeks.
Yeah.
Push, as you can imagine, I just want to come in and push it. These are red. Red, angry attack.
Ammonia.
And the idea of these weeks is to essentially I call it cash in on the progress you've made over the block. And when it comes to load selection in these weeks, this is where I really want to be able to encourage a lot more auto-regulation from the person lifting, the lifter. Whereas, I have held their hand a little bit and I have given them constraints for those first typically 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But, if things are going way better than, the trend those first 3 weeks followed, this is now a chance to keep, to push and find out sort of where you are. But the important role of those first 3 weeks is it slows you down. It makes sure you can get to these push weeks in really good form. And in more often than not, if there is a big spike in a push week, it's because you haven't overshot in those first 3 weeks and you can really make the most of it.
Yeah.
I really like to encourage, more often than not with most people, I'd probably still give a suggested load only because I probably can make a pretty good estimation these days on what someone might be able to do based on a previous week. But I'm more than happy for someone to say, hey, it's supposed to be an RPE 8, or I'm supposed to only have 10 kilos in reserve. I reckon I can go and do this. And then they do it, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. And mental approach for these weeks, do whatever you got to do to make it feel good.
Okay.
Leashes off, go nuts.
Dial in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the system I've created to try and control momentum.
Yeah.
And like we said, the reason we love controlling momentum is to peak at a specific time, and following this sort of structure, week 4 and week 5 is when we see that best performance.
Got it. Yeah. And I'll explain why I liked it. I didn't really know about momentum in depth like this before talking to you, but I did feel that it was different to other blocks that when I wasn't working with you, because I guess my other blocks were always just labeled as week 1 to week 5. So I was just kind of week 1 easy, week 5 hard. That's all I really described it as. And I always had set, set top sets.
Yep.
So
predetermined loads.
Exactly, predetermined loads. And I just had to get it no matter what every week. That was my mentality. So sometimes sometimes week 3 felt like a week 5, but I was like, no, this is how it's meant to be, because I need to get the weight. And it just killed momentum for me, I guess. And that's why I feel like we're talking about momentum in this upward trend where it's kind of zigzaggy, right? I felt like for me, it was just, I wasn't really going anywhere because I was pushing too hard, and then I didn't have any more gas for the next week. But I feel like the way that you have set it out for me made me understand it a lot more as well. And I think the RP kind of helped with that as well, determining the loads.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what you're actually describing is, a really common, I think it's a bit of a false debate. I don't think anyone really argues one way or the other these days. But, for the longest period of time, percentage-based training was this very, very common way to go about strength training. Percentage-based training, meaning, you might have a 1RM of 100 kilos, and then your program might be, in week 1, you hit 50% load. In week 2, 55%. Week 3, 60%. And the loads across a training block were predetermined. And you're right, didn't account for like how you're feeling on the day. So there's that line of thinking. And then this other line of thinking in the last decade or so is very much auto-regulated and using RPE to determine your loads. Thing is, both themes both structures can definitely work. There's cons to both. Essentially what I've come up with is a blend of both.
Yeah.
So indirectly, by telling you, predetermine your load in an intro week and, maybe you got a bit more choice in these momentum weeks. Still, I'm actually capping you.
Yeah.
So I'm forcing almost like, it's not a percentage based on a 1RM or anything like that, but I'm forcing this sort of linear progression over a first 3 weeks and then letting auto-regulation and RPE come into it a lot more in the latter stages of the block. So that's, I guess I've never explained it like that out loud, but that's essentially what I'm doing. And I'm just getting like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Because what, I guess, a big drawback to the auto-regulation only, if I just let you go off and do whatever you wanted in week 1, look, I'm sure most people over time will definitely get a lot better at it. But it's quite easy to, I guess, like overshoot or set the bar too high early.
Yeah.
Everyone can feel really good in week 1 or week 2.
Yeah.
I just see it as way more beneficial to be held back isn't even the right term, but controlled to start. And what that does over time is those push weeks are just always good.
Yeah.
Always good.
Yeah. And I guess that's why with momentum weeks in the middle, it avoids the undershooting and overshooting as well.
Yeah.
Because, you can you have that little choice of pulling back or going the higher end.
Yeah.
But you are, I didn't actually realize you were, because in my momentum weeks, I was like, oh, it's pretty, like it's up to me. But actually you are hinting that forward trajectory. So that's smart. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll briefly talk about how you should be feeling in each week.
Yep.
Yeah, or just the phases. So intro week, I think we've kind of addressed it, but we can just talk a bit more about it, I guess.
Yep.
So intro week, you said you should be feeling like that's your time to feel a little bit more refreshed.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Yeah.
I'm happy for people to honestly, and it's funny, I don't think you'd hear a coach say this, but honestly, I don't care if you sandbag the accessory, get them all done, get stuff on the board. But
no, when you said that to me, it actually helped me a lot because I think in that intro week, I couldn't even be bothered turning up sometimes. But you were like, just do what you want to do. And I was like, okay. And I got it just helps you get through the week easier and it helps you reset. It really does. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it just comes back down to the mental approach to training is half the battle. So if you can have one easier week that, doesn't really affect the rest of the training block, again, like I was saying earlier with, if you take a month of easier training, you don't know how that affects the next 6 months. Same thing here, chill out.
For example, I'll actually give an example of my last week because that was intro week. Dolly knows what happened. Maybe it's not the best example, but I did the first 2 days of my block and then the rest of the week I just made up excuses and I didn't really train from Wednesday to Monday or something. But when I did turn up to the gym, I was just free for all, doing what I wanted to do. But I don't think it's affected my week. So you can just pull back a little bit.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention actually about intro weeks, which might be slightly contrary to what we're saying, is how they will feel, I think, heavily depends on how your last block finished.
Right.
So if you finish your last block and it's a particular block where, you finished up with, especially on your main lifts, a bit of room in the tank, you didn't have to go all out, it didn't completely drain you, you're more likely to start the intro week feeling pretty good. But what definitely can happen, I've had this conversation twice actually, I think one was with you, is if, you finished quite a hard training block, you've hit PBs, your body's just been whacked with this load it's never handled, you're tired, you're sore, that first intro week can be more challenging than you think it would be. And there's two sort of things happening there. The first thing is that you are still, I guess, you're still experiencing the fatigue that you've accumulated over just the whole last training block. That doesn't just like magically go away. And the other thing is, because you finished the last training block and because you've got a green intro week, it's supposed to be easy. You're not coming in thinking it's going to be hard.
True.
And those two things colliding equals sometimes a pretty just average training week. So I think that's something really important to acknowledge. If you are trying to build momentum over training block to training block, not just week to week, that's where it is, I guess, important not to completely bury yourself at an end of a training block. Yeah. So people say, you know, a really typical way I'd love to prep someone for a max out or a powerlifting comp is I look at how the momentum rolls between those last two training blocks, the 5 weeks and the 2 5-week training blocks into that. And I want people to feel really good come week 6 of that. Like that, after that first 5 weeks, even if singles are in the training program, I don't want them to empty the tank on everything and then we have to like spend another week feeling like crap afterwards recovering, because we've only got 5 more weeks to peak then. I'd rather them, you know, hit an RP 8-ish single, maybe an 8's usually not a bad one because it allows for a little bit of overshooting if it happens to happen. And then all of a sudden they can approach that intro week a bit fresher and, you know, started definitely a higher point than they did last time and follow that cycle again.
Do you find that people typically feel a lot better in the week 2s and 3s, so momentum phase?
Yeah, 100%.
Right, yeah.
Honestly, even by like week 3 or 4, I'd say, because there's almost enough time then for your body to reset after that last training block and for you to feel like you're flying again.
Yeah, so you should be feeling pretty good. And then I guess like the mental prep to those momentum weeks are to start to dial in a little bit more. Right? Yeah.
I think if you come into the push weeks already feeling beat up, then the intro weeks and the momentum weeks haven't done their job. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Great. So push week you should be feeling geared up to go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
So good. And I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about was, what is the best way to kill momentum? We always need to talk about the issues.
It's a good point, because I guess the way we have been talking about it is all in a pretty, you know, perfect scenario where nothing goes wrong, right? Yeah. But if you want to kill momentum, you overshoot. The word overshoot just in a training sense describes when you like surpass a target intensity. So, you know, you might have in your program, we're going to hit a single rep at an RPE 7, and, you know, might even give a load range. And someone's like, no, I'm feeling good. I reckon I've got, instead of, you know, 140 to 150, I'm going to come out and smack 160. They do the 160, it's RPE 10 grinder, max effort. All of a sudden, they've accumulated so much more fatigue than was like planned within the training program. Next week when they come back in, so they're even more tired, the chances of them like surpassing that and trying to keep on increasing load all of a sudden is just shattered. Like they might be able to match it or chip it, but it depends how like cooked they've got from that. Because that then like affects the back offsets and how much fatigue you've accumulated from back offsets. And so yeah, number one answer, the best way to kill momentum is overshooting.
Sounds like the most common issue is maxing out then. That's how people would probably call it.
I think people can get married to numbers. Which is so understandable, right? Because this sport, or lifting and training and performance-based goals are quite literally about the numbers. But I guess if you listen to the way I'm describing this all, it all should make sense. And you've got to understand that there's times for that and there's times not so much for that.
Do you find, how about the opposite example, when you completely, like you're undershooting basically?
Yeah, so that To be fair, I think that's a lot less common than you would think.
Yeah.
For sure, there's people that would, undershoot RPEs on paper, and maybe they could be, pushing things a bit harder. But one thing that people that undershoot are pretty good at doing is they'll always be able to add weight every week because they're never that close to failure. So they do a great job over time of accumulating that volume, and it keeps on getting better and better. My role as a coach is to help them work at find that intensity that I think would be a bit more appropriate. But I guess there's less consequences actually with them.
Yeah. Okay. That
that
makes
make sense?
sense. It does. Yeah. How about the unintentional ways where momentum dies because of life? So setbacks, injuries, very common.
Yep.
Holidays.
All right. Let's break
which
these down one by one. What was the first one?
Let's talk about injuries first.
Injuries.
Yeah.
Cool. Good question. I think to preface every single way we answered all of these scenarios is it's context dependent on if there's something coming up.
Yeah.
So let's say it's your max out day coming up, or there's a comp or something. What did we start with? Injuries.
Yeah.
Injuries. So, you might have a pick an injury, your choice.
Shoulder niggle.
Shoulder niggle. Cool. So you've got a shoulder niggle, and what you find is that it actually doesn't affect deadlifts at all. It might slightly affect your bench press, but for whatever reason, it's killing your low bar squats. Squats are heavily affected. I'd separate it down to those. I'd look at it lift to lift first. Your deadlift can keep on training like it normally did. You'd run it through the same sort of cycles. Your bench press, you would see what you can get away with, I think. Obviously, there are things to consider, and maybe there are red flags to, do you need to go see someone? Maybe it does need passive rest, but more often than not, you can probably keep the momentum going. And then what I'd say, if you can't get in a low bar position, we've just got to be sensible for a second and be like, okay, we have to accept that this low bar squat, even though we're in our momentum week or our push week, it's on a different schedule. We're trying to get, your shoulder back to a point where it doesn't feel like this at all. Hey, this whole system I made is bloody fantastic and it works most of the time. But right now, I need you to disconnect from the fact it's a push week for your deadlift, and for low bar squats, we're actually only picking a load we're just trying to tolerate for a period of time.
Yeah.
I think that made sense.
So I guess the mentality is you're not cutting back on training altogether. It's just picking and choosing what's really difficult, or, what you can keep going with the momentum, and what you need to pull back a little bit so that you can properly recover and rehab, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the other example the other example you gave there is you might be sick, you might be out of the gym for a whole week, but it's 8 weeks out from comp, but it's week 3, it's the blue momentum week. Heck, what do you do when you get back in?
Yeah, what do you do?
Great question.
What do you do?
Bugger. Just give up. Try start at a cream week and go again. No. What I would then look at is, okay, what's the most important timestamp sort of along the way? And obviously it's that week, those few weeks before the max out or the comp or whatever. And I'd make sure they're slotted in and we're working towards that. It is hard to give a straight answer because I think it's very context dependent. Some people might be able to come back from being sick and honestly just pick up where they left off, which is completely fine. Whereas someone else, it might just be appropriate then to switch to a 7-week build up of momentum into that testing day instead of, finishing off 2 weeks of this program and then restarting again. It really, I think it depends on how heavily they're affected by that time off for whatever reason it is.
Yeah, sure.
If it's someone proper sick, there's probably symptoms the next week as well anyway. And there's no point in them throwing them into a push week when they're already energy is probably lower than normal. They've had no training for a week, probably not feeling great. And you're just telling them to get G'd up, sniff that ammonia and just lift whatever you can. I don't see the benefit there.
Yeah.
In that scenario, I'd probably definitely that's where you might, go 2 in 3 weeks in a row and sort of build some conditioning back.
Sure. Yeah.
So the answer to this question was always going to be, it depends, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other main common thing is if there's a big life change, so you don't have a lot of time for training anymore, life gets really busy and you have to, I guess you do have to pull back your volume for training.
Yep.
What would you do then?
Yeah, cool. So, hey, if you listen to last week's episode, it's gonna come
Just
back
to last week.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not even gonna answer this. Just listen to last week. First thing is make sure that you change up the program so that it can be adhered to. So that given you life constraints and time to train, this person can get whatever you write down done.
Yeah.
If it is a big drop off in volume, like let's say for example, going from 5 days down to 3, or even like 4 to 3, and it means you can maybe like bench slightly less per week, or there's less like lower body exercises you're doing. You do need to be realistic and acknowledge that there might be some sort of drop off in performance. Now, you're not going to necessarily go backwards, but if you were training for 2-3 training blocks in a row where you're training 4 days a week and you're making you're adding 2.5 or 5 kilos to your squat every single time, and all of a sudden now you're actually doing quite a bit less, you might still see some progress. And it's all very, you can't just pin it to one thing in your program that makes it, but you have to maybe acknowledge, the progress I make now, I can't accurately predict what it's going to be like, because I actually don't have any evidence to sort of support that. So I'd say the first thing is let's maybe set some expectations to begin with. Expectations always big. See what happens and then go from there.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
So I guess it's going back to the drawing board probably. Best to adjust the goals and expectations.
Yeah, just be willing to adapt.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're definitely not going to, make progress anymore. Obviously, people can progress of 1 day of training if done right?
Yeah.
But your body gets used to a certain thing, and then when you stop giving it, I think it takes a bit of time to get used to something less.
But you do make a good point about how it's best to be realistic, right? Because if you don't have much time, but you're just still trying to push through and you're not getting it done, it's going to be overall frustrating, and that's probably going to more kill momentum. We want that upwards trajectory, even if it goes up and down.
And I think one of the things I said earlier was, the momentum isn't just in training and the loads you're doing. It's like you can have mental momentum as well. And you're right, like if you are getting frustrated or training is becoming burdensome, that's you're killing your mental momentum as well.
That's so true. Yeah, so good. So was there anything else you wanted to address?
Actually, I made a note here.
Yeah.
So I saw this post the other day, which I thought was awesome. I sent it to Lou and some other people actually. And it talked about momentum, and it said, momentum is, I think this is what it said. I'm paraphrasing now. Momentum is knowing when to play offense and when to play defense. And I think that does pretty well reflect the sort of the system I described too. Like there are times to push and there are times to hold back or stay conservative, or the what's that phrase they use in America all the time that sucks? What's it called? Stay in the pocket.
Stay
you
in
heard
the
that?
pocket. No.
Oh, no. I hate this top singer, 200 kilos. I'm staying in the pocket. I'm staying in the pocket. It's like synonymous with staying conservative.
Got it.
Not maxing out.
Okay, I love it. I'm going to use that now.
No, I thought maybe it has died, which is great. I hated it. I don't know why. Powerlifting terminology is cringe. And I just thought that was a really cool way of explaining it.
Can you post it to the stories?
I'll post it to the stories.
Good. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Wait for that. I guess I'll just recap the little episode.
Yep.
Yep. Actually, it was a pretty big one. I learned a lot in this episode.
I could tell. It was good.
It was great.
Do you recommend everyone, like Coach, listens to this to get the full understanding?
You must. You have to. Yeah.
Okay. Let them know.
So momentum is week to week progression in training. Is that how we described it? Can you define it?
That's our working definition. Yeah.
Okay. It's good for performance-based goals, and it helps to maintain energy and focus throughout the week. It also helps you mentally prepare and approach the week with the right focus. And I guess the other thing was you shouldn't be afraid to adjust based on, different life changes and things like that. And don't max out.
Nice.
Don't be critique. Sorry.
To be fair, critique is becoming, especially in the last few weeks, so much better with all of this.
Good.
I'm so proud.
I'm so excited to watch him. He's doing Nationals. Yeah. Exciting.
This in 8 days.
Yeah.
In 8 days. So he's Kane on the Saturday.
Yeah.
Wait, maybe I should have referenced this. This is new. This is
true.
So at Powerlifting Nationals next week, we've got Kane and Critique in the 82s on the Saturday. They're in the last session if you want to come watch that. And then Jess Pendlebury is on the Sunday in the last session as well. So they've all been training really, really well. And keen to see how they go. I think everyone's looking good. Everyone's looking
that's
good
great.
For like the best comps ever. So
yep.
It'll be a fun weekend.
Amazing. That's so exciting.
Will you be around at all?
I want to try. I do have things on those 2 days, but maybe on a Sunday like afternoon or something.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll try. All right. Well, let's end off with
I forgot we got this.
I knew Dolly would have forgotten. That's why I'm here.
Wicked Wango cards.
Wicked Wango cards. I'm shuffling.
Okay.
All right. Dolly, you go.
You want me to read it out?
Read it out, yeah.
All right. So if you're new to the potty, we read out Wicked Wango cards once a week in our mission to...
get to know each other better.
All right. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Oh, no.
What kind of people do you hate to be around?
Oh. All right. So I guess we were calm in the intro, so we can let it out now, right?
Go for it.
I'm trying to think. No. I'm actually... other things... Let me think. Do you have one? There are just some...
The people I'd hate to be around...
Okay, actually, I've got one.
Yeah.
I call them chronic complainers. So I guess when, you just know that they're just going to put out some negative energy, especially, actually, you know what's a good example? When you go to someone else's gathering and they're there and they make it about themselves and they just complain about every little thing that they can. Do you know those people?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the worst.
I reckon there's people like that. You don't even have to go to the gathering.
Exactly. Well, that's what I think, though, when they constantly do that. I'm like, why are you here? It's not about you. It's about the person who's, I don't know, hosting, or like everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
That one's a good one. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm imagining I'd say a similar sort of person.
People hate arrogance. I know that's a common one that people talk about.
Yeah. Or just people that just aren't aware. Or people that just aren't self-aware.
Yeah.
That's it. That's probably it.
Yeah. Fair.
I like that.
Yeah.
It was tame.
Great. That's it for
today. I can't believe that took an hour. I actually thought we flew through that.
Was that an hour?
Yeah, we're in an hour 4.
Consistent with our other episodes, so I guess we're not going down to 30 minutes.
Yeah, I can't believe they are so consistent.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was like half an hour of chatting.
Were your other ones consistent in the past? Is it?
Oh, not really. There's probably a bigger, like a half hour range, I'd say.
Yeah. We've done well.
We have.
What's
next week.
Yeah.
we are going to talk about navigating injuries and niggles,
Right. Okay.
which I think is a good one because if
Have you had many yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll make a list of them
Yeah, so you can talk through
and I
them.
I can complain about them for the whole episode and
No.
make it all about me.
Why are you here?
That'll be a good one. Yeah.
Great. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Happy Monday if you're listening to this on Monday. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please give us a rating out of 5, preferably 5. But you know what? Do what your heart says because I would respect more an accurate rating than me telling you 5.
Not till 5.
Okay, do 5. If you're listening on Spotify, you can follow the podcast, which is cool. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to like it and subscribe to the channel. Hey, feel free to leave a comment as well. We'll read out any comment that's left on either Spotify or YouTube over the next week. We'll read out next week.
That's fine.
Anything goes.
I love that.
Cool. We're out of
All
here.
right. Bye.
See ya.